Okay, so in the previous video we left off speaking about the Arizal, Rav Yitzchak Luria, who was a very interesting, charismatic, kind of eccentric individual and a great Kabbalistic teacher, master. He was a student of the Ramak of Rav Moshe Cordovero, and he is kind of responsible for, I wouldn't say a different brand of Kabbalah, but the way that the Ramak kind of organized a set of Kabbalah. The Arizal also organized a system of Kabbalah and he explained it in a certain way, and he built off of the ideas of the Ramak. So he basically explained the following, and try to bear with me again. These concepts are difficult to follow, but and especially if you're not going to really learn them in depth from someone who doesn't really know what he's talking about. But I'll try my best, and if you can try your best, then hopefully we'll be able to understand something. Okay, so he refers to this concept called tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to contract. So basically what he's doing when he's explaining tzimtzum is he's answering the following question. If God is infinite, right, then how could there possibly be room in existence for anything other than God? Right? How is it possible that I can exist if I am not God, and yet Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, right? If that's the case, then how could I and you and a building, how can anything exist? So what he explains is that God contracted himself. He, in a way, he made himself smaller so that there was room for people to exist and for the world to exist. And in that process of tzimtzum, God contracting himself, these tremendously powerful forces emanated from God. They went forth from him, and that is how and then in that experience of the tzimtzum process, the svirot explode. Right, it was as if like these svirot that were supposed to hold God's energy, like were filled too much, and they exploded. And this explosion leads to something called klipot, the shards. So the shards of the svirot are now scattered in the world. So the process of tzimtzum led to the explosion of the svirot, those svirot that we talked about, the 10 svirot that we talked about before, and in that process, there were klipot, the shards of the svirot that were, they scattered throughout the world. And these shards, these is like almost like pieces of glass, right? Those things those are responsible for the evil that is in the world. These broken pieces of the svirot. And the way that the job of the Jew, the job of the human being, and the job of the Jew in particular in this world, is to repair the world, to do tikkun olam. Nowadays we talk about tikkun olam as like social justice, especially in the reform movement. They like to talk about tikkun olam, but tikkun olam in the Kabbalistic sense is not about social justice. Really, it's about all mitzvot. It's about you doing mitzvot that kind of repairs the svirot, and each individual mitzvah, that every single individual Jew, every time you make a bracha, every time you daven, every time, especially if you daven with kavana, every time that you put on tefillin, every time that you keep Shabbos, you are doing tikkun olam. You're repairing the world by restoring the klipot. You're fixing the world. You're getting rid of the evil. On the other hand, when a person does an achet, when they do an avera, then that also has these huge cosmic impact. It sends forth these nitzotzot, these sparks of evil into the world. So every single person, don't think that you don't make a difference, says Lurianic Kabbalah. Every little tiny Jew who thinks he's insignificant, in reality, is actually a tremendously important individual because of all the mitzvot that they do, that they can repair the world, that they can do tikkun olam. So this concept is really very attractive, right? It makes every single little individual Jew, even if I think I'm so insignificant, I've been persecuted, I've been expelled, I've been this, I'm poor, I'm nothing, I'm a nobody. But there's no such thing as a nothing and a nobody according to Kabbalah, because every single Jew has so much power. You can daven with kavanah, you can do mitzvot, you can do tefillah, you can repair the world, you can do tikkun olam, you can fix the entire world with your mitzvot. That's huge, right? So every single person has such a tremendous impact. And in addition, that will not only repair the world, but that can also bring Mashiach. So if you think the world is bad, if you think there are problems in the world, your mitzvot, your tikkun olam can bring Mashiach. And that is also a tremendous aspect of Kabbalah. Kabbalah and Messianism are very interconnected. So when you talk about people in this time, right, who are really hoping and writing about Mashiach and really expecting Mashiach to come, because when you think about the way that, like we talked about, as bad as things were, so terrible after the Crusades and the expulsion and everything, Jews are expecting it's got to be Mashiach, and they felt that Kabbalah explains a way of kind of pushing Mashiach to come a little sooner. If we can repair the world through our mitzvah, through our tikkun olam, we can actually bring Mashiach a little sooner. So the ideas of the Ari begin to spread, especially also very fortunate. This is around the time of the printing press. So it happened to be a lot easier to spread ideas in writing. And it wasn't just for a few people who could hear the ideas of the Ari and who could learn from him, but the printing press allows it to spread further. There's one more point that I want to make, and that is we talked last month about the Maimonidean controversy, and Maimonidean controversy has some connections to Kabbalah. Now you have to understand that the Rambam's ideas, the super rational Rambam, are really not in line at all with Kabbalah, if you think about it, right? The Rambam is all about logic. It's all about explaining things. It's all about mitzvot makes sense because mitzvot enable me to be a better person. Like doing chesed is important because I become a more kind person. And all the mitzvot, according to the Rambam, can all be explained in a rational way. The Rambam doesn't look at mitzvot in terms of how they repair the world in an unseen way, in a cosmic way that they create and they repair. That's not what the Rambam looks at all. The Rambam looks at it as it is rational. It makes sense, right? So the Kabbalists, though, they see it not like that at all. They see it as what are you talking about? It's not only rational. Mitzvot change the world. The Rambam is not giving the whole picture of the role of the Jew in the world. It's not just about making yourself better. It's not that God doesn't need you. According to the Rambam, God is perfect. God doesn't need you. According to the Kabbalists, God needs human beings to perfect the world. That's why we do mitzvah. We perfect the world. We fix the world from the destruction of the original tzimtzum. Right? According to the Rambam, what are you talking about? God's perfect. Mitzvot are only for ourselves. So the Kabbalah said, Rambam, I don't agree with that. Mitzvot can change the world in a cosmic way, right? Mitzvot are huge. Every little tiny thing that you do has such a huge impact. The Rambam didn't necessarily see it like that, or at least he saw it as being extremely important, but in a different way. And the Kabbalists didn't really agree with that. And so therefore, even though Kabbalah was not written about as much beforehand, at this point, kind of almost as a reaction to the Rambam, the Kabbalists felt like, well, now is the time. It's important for us to teach that. So we have some of these ideas about the Arizal and the Lurianic Kabbalah. We have, what Tzimtzum is, and Klipot, the Sfirot, the Klipot being the shards of the Sfirot, responsible for the evil in the world, and Mitzvot being a way of repairing, of doing Tikkun Olam. And we have the Nitzotzot, the evil Nitzotzot that are created from doing Averot. We talked about why that's so important for a Jew, that makes us feel so significant, and how the Rambam didn't necessarily see it that way, and Kabbalah literature can be seen as kind of having this explosion at this time, kind of responding to the Maimonidean controversy.